Hey everybody, it's Kathy Klotz-Guest. Welcome, welcome. It's time for the Yes and brand. Yes and brand. Don't hide your head in the sand when things ain't going like you planned. Get all the news you can't stand. Get yourself over to the Yes and brand. We gotta work on that. But I like to have fun. That's what this show's really all about. So, welcome everybody. Just coming back from, just got back from South by Southwest. It was incredible. It was fun. It was crazy. All that good stuff. It was just a lot of great, wonderful stuff. How do I describe South by Southwest to people that maybe haven't been? It's where technology, creativity, music, the arts, the best in technology, all that stuff kind of get together and have a baby. A wonderful, wonderful baby. And it's great and it's fun and I learned a ton. And happy to be back. I'm happy to be back. So welcome everybody to the Yes and Brand Show. It's great to be back. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. I think everybody's a little Irish on St. Patrick's Day. So Erin go bra to everybody, which I think is Ireland forever. So happy St. Paddy's Day to you. Hey, JS, happy St. Paddy's Day to you. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Happy to be back today. And in 2 weeks, so starting in 2 weeks on the 31st of March, I'm going to start using VLive TV to have guests. Next week, I'm going to be gone again. I'm going to be in San Diego, coming back, finishing up the Social Media Marketing World Conference in San Diego. So on the 31st, on March 31st, I'll actually start using VLive to have guests. So that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to. But with scheduling kind of stuff, I have to wait till I get past all that stuff. But we are going to have on the 31st a fellow improviser. Hey, Lisa, we are going to have a fellow improviser and friend of mine, Mike Ganino, and he works with Michael Port and things like that. And we're both we have improv crushes on each other. We're both improvisers. We've both been trained in all the wonderful stuff that improv brings, and we're going to have a really robust conversation about improv and culture and creating your ensemble. Improvisers work in an ensemble. You need a cast. You need a bunch of people around you. You need collaboration. You need a team to do what you do best. So we're going to have that conversation on the 31st. So very excited about having some guests. Thanks, Lynn. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Lisa. Hey, JS. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm a little out of sorts today. It's kind of like, what just happened? But South by is always just a big party. It's just so much fun. It's just so much fun. So happy to be back. All right. I want to talk today about something that, I've talked about a lot in the book in Stop Boring Me. And it's something that we all know as marketers and communicators, many of you listening, we already know. We hear about storytelling. I'm a storyteller, and every one of you is a storyteller. And I did write about this in Stop Boring Me. I have a whole chapter dedicated to details, but I want to talk about kind of a little bit of the science behind it and why it's so important. And let me start by saying this, that because we're all in this harried world, when we do storytelling, and I use that a little bit loosely, because what I call a story and what practitioners call a story and what maybe the ad industry would call a story might differ. But when we get in a hurry, we shorten the story, and a lot of times we leave details out because we're in a hurry. We're trying to connect with an audience that's so ADD today. I have it, you have it, we all have it. And there's just so much information coming at people. So what ends up happening is in that hurry to disseminate information, we go back into detail mode, but not good detail. We go into fact overload. We go into the fact overload. And that just doesn't work. Everybody today is so heightened with facts that it's like Pong, or it's like, your favorite pinball game. Everybody's got their shield up. So when you come at me with a bunch of facts, I'm just pinging it away all day long. It's like, whatever favorite pinball game you have, I'm just swatting away those balls as fast as I can because I can't process it. So we're living in that world where, yes, we have 7 seconds. And I think people think that 7 seconds means we have to get to the information very quickly, but that's really simply not true. If you use those 7 seconds to get their attention to a story, then you have them and you can actually widen that, but you got to grab them in those 7 seconds. And there's a really interesting sort of neuroscientific, if you provide more detail, Lisa, that's right. If you interest people, you will get more time. And I'll tell you a story about that in a second. You will get more time, but you have to grab people in that 7 seconds. So there is a neurological reason and basis for all that. And it just really goes back to pure evolution. It really, as human beings, we haven't changed in all those years. We're very visual and we're scanning the environment for threats. We're threat scanning machines is what we are. So all day long, we're looking at, all right, you're going to waste my time. And we don't differentiate. Our brain doesn't differentiate even today between a physical threat and a information threat. We get that feeling. And so the shield goes up. And so part of what that means is we're very visual animals. We're really visual animals. And we know that we don't like jargon. Everybody knows and admits that jargon is bad, but the biological basis for that is really, really simple. Is when you start talking to me and you start using words, my brain is a database. So when you start using physical sensory details, my brain is going through its Rolodex. And if you say the word, if you use cooking or grandma's cooking and the smell of fresh cinnamon, my database is going scan, scan, scan. Ah, fresh cinnamon. I know what that is. Ding, 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 ding. I got a lock on that. I know what that is. But if you were to say, well, my grandmother was in the kitchen making her symbiotic, synergistic cooking, I'd be like, okay, I don't know what that is. Ding, ding, ding. Nope, nope, nope. I don't get a lock on that. I don't get a lock. So our brain will go to the visual first. It will go to the literal first. It goes to a literal visual interpretation first. And if it can't understand what that is, it will go to a metaphorical secondary. And if it can't understand the metaphorical, it tunes out. So really important fact when you're talking to people, our brain goes to the literal first. It wants to get a visual. Then it goes and defers to the metaphorical, which is why some of your friends, and I have friends that are very literal. When I make a joke, they go to literal first. We go to literal first, then we go to metaphorical, but I'm a highly metaphorical person, probably because I'm a comedian. So I go to the metaphorical. Then if I don't understand what that is, I tune out. So there's 3 levels of a person's brain trying to scan for understanding. And what that means is if I'm using words like paradigm shifting and synergies and all this other stuff, the brain goes literal, don't get it. Don't have an interpretation in my Rolodex, in my human Rolodex for what that actually is. Because you could mean something different. Then it will defer down to the metaphorical database. And if there isn't a sync up there, it tunes out. Then you've lost them. So this is why it's so important on 2 levels. And I have a whole chapter in my book, Stop Boring Me, on details. I have a whole chapter dedicated to this, and that's why. You've got to give visual details that hit the senses. Synergy is an abstract concept. It is not based in anything physical. So rather than tell you synergy, the word synergy is empty calories in your brain. It doesn't mean anything because there's nothing stored in your database probably for synergy. Now, what does that mean? However, instead of talking about synergy, which, I probably should kick my own butt if I'm using words like that because I hate jargon. I mean, I'm the one always talking about jargon monoxide poisoning and quit jargonstipating your clients. I hate it. So rather than say those words, give me a story. That's where story and sensory information becomes really invaluable. So instead of saying, synergy, rather than, hey, I'm going to tell you a story about, a time where 2 companies collaborated. And you don't even have to say that. Just go into the story. That's better. So there are certain words that, we all hate. We all agree we hate because it's jargon, but that's the reason why. The biological basis for it is our brains have to work too hard to process meaning. That's it. I can't get a lock on what you mean. You might mean something different from synergy. I'm having to now guess what you mean, and my brain's scanning, going, and it's not going to work that hard. So really simple, literal first, secondary metaphorical, and if neither one of those works, The third, mental checkout. That's what basically happens. And that's the neurological, physiological basis for why we all agree we hate jargon. Like, I hate jargon. And as a comedian, I make fun of it. But that's the biological basis why. There's a really good reason why. We don't have time when we're under siege to process these empty calorie words. So get those empty calorie words out. And this is where sensory detail becomes important. Most of us, in my experience, because I spent 15 years in high-tech marketing, and when I left, I was a senior director of marketing. And here's what I know to be true. We are trying to do an end run around people's humanity. We're trying to get as much information out as possible in the shortest amount of time. Problem is we defer to facts. Facts don't work. So we got to hit the senses, and we can't just hit their cognitive senses, right? We have to hit auditory. We have to hit visual. We have to hit olfactory. We have to hit their sense of smell. We have to hit all these senses, tactile. We have to hit all these senses. So details become very important. Not empty calorie details, right? No, I'm going to synergize and optimize for the paradigm shifting. No, stop. But if I can tell a story that hits all these different things, that's what's going to connect. And that's why analogies work. Because when you take an abstract concept and you anchor it in something familiar that hits these sensory modes, then the person goes, lock, visual, we got to hit. I get what you mean. So rather than when you're dealing with abstracts, the tendency is to talk in these buzzwords because we don't know how to explain it. A much better way is to just give an analogy. So, for example, I was at the show, and there was a woman there that had created, I told the story a little bit the other day, she created a biometric vibrator, and people were like, biometric vibrator? Like, what does that mean? And she started using all these kind of buzzwords. And I said, so basically, it's a Fitbit for your vagina. And everybody laughed, but they got it. And she said, you know what? Actually, that's kind of what it is. It's for measuring the health of, for women so that they have a baseline if their health changes and all these different signs change. They have a baseline for detecting any kind of changing in their layer down there to go, oh my gosh, I need to go see a doctor. So it's a baseline, but it anchors it in something that people are familiar with. So get a visual lock. Analogies and similes and metaphors work really great, but make it very, very visual. If you're telling a story, use all the senses. So I was at the Moth a couple months ago, and I told the story about when my mom was very sick in the hospital. And rather than describe, well, she was very sick and the ovarian cancer had spread, no, I started my story very simply. It was 1 a.m. on Highway 101. My car was out of gas. And I had spent the whole day at the hospital. I had forgotten to get gas in my car. And I just burst out into tears. Here I was on Highway 101, broken down. No gas in my car, desolate highway. How the hell did I get here? What happened? And then I back up into that whole day of spending a couple of days with my mom in the hospital while she was going through cancer treatment, and how I hadn't slept in a couple of days. And then how towards the end of the story, I tell my father has already passed on, and out of nowhere, I'm bawling my eyes out at 1 a.m, broken down in my car. I have no gas. All of a sudden, cops pull up behind me and knock on my window. And how can I help you? And pulls me over to the side. And about 5 minutes before that happened, I had said a prayer to my father. My father had passed on when I was 17. And I said, Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. And just at that moment, literally within 5 minutes, the cops pulled up behind me, escorted me, got me some gas, got me on my way. And I talked about the emotional impact of this story. And if I sit there and I tell you that I was going through a tough time and all that stuff, you don't get a visual. You don't get a visual. It's emotional, but it's not enough currency because details are an emotional conduit for your story. I'm going to say that again. It's really palpable. I've been storytelling a long time in business and on stages. It is the emotional conduit for carrying the feelings for your story. But when I tell this story about, I start out with me crying. It's 1 a.m. My car has no gas on Highway 101, and I am in tears, and I am exhausted, and I'm drained, and I'm in tears. And then I back up how I got there. And you can do the same with clients. If you're telling a business story, rather than say, yeah, we had this one client and they had a hard time in their business and blah, 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 blah. And so we went in and we helped them and we set up this campaign and we got them out of trouble. That's details, that's facts, but that's not the right kind of emotional details. We need sensory details. So there's a difference between fact details and emotional details. And that story, okay, great. You came in and helped them and you had a client that was losing money, but that doesn't hit me emotionally. But what if I start out the story and say, Robert got off the phone, and as he got off the phone, he looked at his admin with tears in his eyes, and he said, for the first time in our company's history, I have to lay off my family, and I have to lay off people that have worked for this company for 20 years through no fault of their own. But I have to lay these people off to give my company a fighting chance at coming back. And they're like family to me. So it's like laying off members of my own family. And what if I started with that emotional currency about a founder's baby and what that means to him emotionally? And then I tell you about, all right, now here's how we helped Robert. Here's how we helped Robert get back on his feet. We're afraid in business to go to the interiority and go inward to the emotions. And that's kind of silly because all business is emotional. Somebody's business is very personal to them. So the way that you can hit these senses, the way that you overcome a lot of the issues that we see with just information mode, I'm going to shut down. What senses can you hit? If I'm telling a story of how I helped the client, first tell me what the client's trouble was. What did that do for him or her emotionally? What was the emotional weight? Because that's sensory. We feel it. What did it smell like? Maybe you're given a story about interviewing for a job and you're sitting in the waiting room and you're sweating and the sweat is mixed with your perfume and you're looking at the walls and there's paint on the walls and there's really weird music. And tell us what that felt like. Give us a visual. Give us a lock on feeling, on sound, on smell, on all these details. People may think, oh, that's kind of extraneous. No, don't cut that stuff out, because when you're telling a story to make a point, and if there is a point there, there should be, these cues, these sensory details will help the person you're talking to lock on to, I know what that's like to be nervous. I know what it's like to sweat. I know what that smell sounds like. I know what that smell is. Oh my God, I know that smell. I've had that smell. I totally get all that. So the more sensory emotional details you are giving, you are helping them go through an emotional arc when they're hearing your story. So it's all right. Now we have that biological basis. And that's really what I wanted to share with you. These are details that I think we all kind of sort of know as marketers, but we forget. And again, I've got a whole chapter on this detail because what improv really likes is details. Improv likes specificity, because if I'm starting out a scene, whether it's on a storytelling stage or a business stage, it's no different. Human beings want details. I can come into a scene and I can hand somebody a drink. Or I can say, here's your slightly mixed martini with 2 olives, Bob, because I know you're really picky about 2 olives. And I didn't just get you any olive. I got you the stuffed feta cheese olives that you like. Here you go, Bob. Why does that detail become important? Because it establishes character. It establishes something about that scene and one of the characters being very picky and very selective about what they like. So details become really super important that way. I think you get the point. We skip them in business, and we skip them because we're kind of, again, in that fast track lane to get to information only. But there is a danger in information only because you've not captured the emotional essence and you've not conveyed that to the other person. So if you can give sensory details in your business and in your storytelling, the right amount, the right balance, it has to be appropriate, right? But don't be in such a hurry to sanitize your story and make it information only. That's a book report. That's not a story. That's a book report, not a story. So you're going to have to get to the specificity where it's relevant. And I promise you, when you give specifics that hit the senses, you're bypassing that filter that shuts down. And and it's funny because I've written about this prolifically and I use it and I advise clients on this, but to have the neuroscience, it's really interesting to have the neuroscience, listening to the head of research from a large agency talk about the research, the neuroscience behind it. It makes so much sense. Again, Literal, we want a literal interpretation. And if I can't get my head around what you're saying, I go to the metaphorical. If metaphorical is not working for me, I tune out. So you only got a couple of layers to hit somebody with. So give them the senses, get to the analogies and the similes. If you've got an abstract concept, the best thing that you can do is anchor that abstraction in something physical and concrete, that something is relatable. And that's the best way to do that. Otherwise, you're going to lose that person. And again, it's the reason we all admit and we laugh about it, that we absolutely hate jargon, but we use it. Because sometimes it takes work to get to the sensory layers. And it means we have to think differently and get out of our own heads and think differently. But if you can do that, if you can get to those sensory layers and you can really relay what you mean, you're going to be better off with connection. So that's really the short neuroscience underlying why human beings just can't process these words. We don't have the enzyme. We don't have the meaning enzyme to break this stuff down into anything sensible. So it sort of goes with what we already gut-wise, I think, know. Viscerally, we already know that. But I think it provides a really great, solid neuroscientific foundation to do that. So it is more work, but I think it's really, really important to do. Let's see, Alan, let me show this here. Alan's got, buying decisions are more emotional than logical. Absolutely. But it's funny how many, even though we know this anecdotally, we know this, what's really interesting is that we still see this happening in B2B. We still see the sanitization of details in B2B. I came out of B2B, so I know. But as an improviser and as a storyteller and a comic, my trade, my currency is emotions. That's the emotional conduit with which I connect with the audience. And it's interesting. I still see this in B2B. We want to do an end run around our buyer's humanity, and it doesn't work that way. We think we're actually taking the short run, but actually it's a circuitous route that doesn't have benefits because there's nothing for them to hold on to. There's nothing in a sea of information. There's nothing for them to hold on to. So when you're tempted in a hurry, what happens is in a hurry, our brains go back to information mode. We're in a hurry. So we want to just connect with information. But that's the worst thing that we can do. So even when we're in a hurry, step back and anchor yourself in something. If it's new to them and it's an abstract concept, anchor yourself in something familiar. Hit the senses. Hit the senses in some way, shape, or form. You're going to have more connection and more meaning. And that's something that we just all get in a hurry and we do. But it's really not the best way to do it. It's sort of taking the long run, not the short run. So really super important. I think it's chapter 3 of Stop Boring Me is this chapter that I'm referring to on details. And the specificity is so delicious for our brains. Our brain will remember stuff. I mean, I've done shows where people come up to me a year or two later and they'll go, oh, I remember that thing that you did. You were a mafia boss and you were 10 and you had a thing for RC Cola. And they'll remember the RC Cola and that I was 10 because we gave so many yummy details and specifics that the audience went, how could I forget that? How could I forget that? And they'll still come up to me a year later after a show I've done. And they're like, I remember you. You were the 10-year-old that drank the RC Cola you were trying to orchestrate a hostile takeover of your dad's ant farm business. And they'll remember such specifics because the specifics are what make that story funny and memorable. So do take the time where you can to build that in there. I think it's super, super important, and I can't emphasize it enough. It just is, and you know there is no short run in B2B, and we think we have to get that in 7 seconds, and we do. But if we draw somebody in emotionally, they'll give us more time. You and I both know we've all had meetings where I've had meetings where I'm meeting with a senior exec, and they're like, "All right, you got 15 minutes." Has anybody here had that experience? I have. Somebody will say, oh my God, okay, Kathy, I'm really sorry. I'm really busy. I know we planned an hour. I got 15 minutes. And then I'll just start with a story, or I'll start with something emotional and say, rather than, well, what do you want to talk about? And use that time for that. Well, you called me here and you left me 5 voicemails. Something must be percolating for you. What's on your mind? That kind of busyness, I could hear it in your voice. What's going on? start the conversation in a different way and get to the emotional context of it. As what you'll find is, I think that 7 seconds you grab their attention will turn into much longer. You actually have leeway. And some of my long form content, I'm sure for a lot of people here too listening, some of your long form content is probably the best performing content you've had because you've anchored it in the emotions and in the details. So that's awesome. Awesome. Lynn, yes, that's the challenge. Yeah, it does take work to get to the sensory layers. And that's why not everybody does it. It's work. You have to do it. You have to do it. And it takes work. And that's why I always call it jargon monoxide poisoning, because it's so easy to fall back on it. It's easy to do, and our brains do it very naturally. But it's actually damaging to us. I think that's really the thing I want people to know. It's super, super damaging. It's not the best that we can do. We can do better. Trying to get all your brilliant comments, everybody. Yeah, we remember food references. Yeah, no, it's funny. We remember anything that sort of is really anchored in specifics. People will remember because it's the thing that people go, oh my God, or I have that in common with that person. So people will never forget the little details. Don't think those little details are unimportant. They're not. So, and I do like hot sauce. I do's. So there you go. Secret sushi. Hey, Adam, what's going on? What's up? We had Alan, we had Lisa, we had Lynn. We have Adam. We have some people going on here. What's up? So anyway, I just wanted to sort of remind you of that. I don't think it's really a new finding. I think we all, as marketers and communicators, we viscerally know that. We just forget. And listening to the neuroscience behind what we already know can be helpful sometimes, because it's like, yeah, I know that. Now I have an explanation for it. And that's really important. Happy Friday to you, Adam. Adam, everybody's Irish today, right? We're all Irish. Erin Gabra, everybody. That's why you should bake cookies. You should bake cookies. I love it. It's so true. That's so true, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, anytime you're telling a story about like your mom or your grandma, what do people typically tell? They tell the story about how your mom or your grandma baked cookies and what that smelled like. I can still remember like the smell in my house when my father would cook stuffing and he'd make it from scratch and he'd get the turkey ready. And I can remember that. And I think everybody that you talk to has a favorite holiday memory, Thanksgiving memory that's anchored in cooking for their family. So when you give those specific, juicy, wonderful details, people are like, yes. And they can anchor it back in a visual lock, a memory lock on their own, from their own experience. So that's really, really super cool. You're right. And I like cookies. I do like cookies. All right. Well, happy Friday to you. What's going on, Adam? What's up with you? What's going on? Top of the Friday to you. You know, I had a great weekend, or excuse me, a great week, and I'm just a little tired because I was running all week. I was gone for 6.5 days at South by, and I got in about 11 o'clock last night. And 6 a.m. came really early this morning, and I'm still not quite 100% ready for it, except for my kids and my alarm clock. My 8-year-old got me up. But happy to be back. Had a great time, and just happy to get back to this and see everybody and all that good stuff. What did I enjoy most about South by? Yeah. Gosh, so many things. I'll tell you what I liked the most about it. I liked that it was interesting to see how technology is changing everything. But it was more than just AI, Adam, and more than VR and AR and artificial intelligence, which was huge at the show. And there were tracks on how AI is changing digital health. There were even tracks on smart cities, smarter cities. How is AI and all that stuff going to help our cities run more efficiently? What can that mean for government? What can that mean for more transparent government? So I found it interesting how AI could be married up to solve human problems and make people's lives better. So I wasn't so much interested in AI as I was seeing where it married up with how can we solve some real problems, poverty, how can we get more people engaged in politics, how can we make our cities smarter, how can we fix cancer, how can we take all this AI? I talked about this earlier. Joe Biden talked about how can we have all these organizations, cancer organizations, talk to each other and share information and get to cures faster. So that's where I get excited. My goal was attending was I spoke. The honest answer is I spoke. I did a workshop for about 80 people on the book on idea orgasms, which is the second half of my book, Stop Boring Me, and it was all about applying improv to idea generation. And people had a great old time. It was very funny. We had a laughter yoga workshop right next to the right next to my workshop, and it was like having my own personal laugh track because every time I crack a joke, next door, the laughter workshop, you could hear people go, ah, ha, 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 ha. And I was like, hey, that's going to sound great on my B-roll. It was like having my own personal corny laugh track, but it was great. It was fun. It was a blur, but so I got to do a book signing. I had a workshop, and then I got to see a whole bunch of other stuff. And Shell and Robert talked about the fourth transformation. Sandy Carter launched her book on extreme innovation, which was fantastic. A lot of really amazing stuff. A lot of really, really cool stuff. And thank you, Lynn. I had a great time. Yes, I did. Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was really funny. What did you just said something very funny. Where was it? I'm trying to go back to what you said, Adam. Yeah, it was crazy. But at one point it got a little bit weird because the people in the back of the workshop, in back of the ballroom, were like, Kathy, we can't hear you. Because all you could hear, they were right up against the wall of the other workshop, and all they could hear was the laughter yoga and the people laughing. And it's kind of weird. It's like, it's kind of annoying that they can't hear. At the same time, it's kind of hard to get mad at the sound of laughter. Laughter is such a beautiful sound, and I would rather hear somebody laugh than somebody complain. So it's such a beautiful human sound that it's kind of hard to get mad, but it was just a little bit hard for people to hear. But people had a great time. People walked out of there going, oh my God, I had no idea that improv could be applied in so many creative brainstorming ways. And I sold a lot of books. So about 80% of the books that I brought to South by were gone. People snapped up my books. So that was good. It was good. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny? It was fun. It was fun, to have that. It was fun. I don't know if Alan Bergson, if you're still here, thank you for joining us today. I know some people kind of come in and out, and that's as it should be on a Friday morning. Everybody's busy and got stuff to do, but I've loved having you. Yeah, Lynn, it was pretty ironic. If putting me up, I felt like there was maybe an improv track and a laughter track, and we were sort of shoved into a certain part of the hotel, but it was very funny. And what I was amazed at is how many people came to the workshop because they were just intrigued. And I asked people, what got you to this workshop? And they loved the write-up, but like 80% said your title. I called it Idea Orgasms, Content Idea Orgasms. And everybody said that title alone sold them. And one guy after the workshop, he worked at a ride-sharing service. And he said, he came up to me afterwards and he said, now I have to go home and tell my wife that Kathy gave me orgasms, idea orgasms, but that Kathy gave me lots and lots of orgasms. So it was a good time. It was a really, really fun time. So yeah, I'm just a little bit, and I found myself in a mosh pit one night. I was in a mosh pit with a Capital One exec, and we were at a party, and people are being thrown around the mosh pit. And imagine people around this mosh pit, heavy metal thrash, and this Capital One exec is like, so tell me about your business. And we're like, being thrown around the mosh pit. So that stuff can only happen at South by. That's the clash of contexts. That's, this crazy stuff over here, but these great conversations over here. That really, I think, is the epitome of South by and why it's I love it so much. But yeah. So, all right, everybody, I've loved having you. I've loved being back. Next week, I'm going to, we're not going to do the Yes and Brand show. I may try to get a little snippet in from social media marketing world. Maybe I'll pull in a guest. I don't know. try to do it from the show floor. And then on the 31st, we're back with a guest. We're having a guest. So yeah, take care, Adam. Thanks for joining me. And that's our edition of the Yes and Brand show. Join us 10 a.m. Pacific most Fridays, except where Kathy is, Kathy's maybe traveling, but we'll try to do something from the Social Media Marketing World show floor as well. All right, everybody, take care. Keep it human. I'm keeping it human, so you keep it human out there too. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye.